Welcome to a new year of Survive and Thrive, your global media viability podcast. I'm Janelle Dumalaon, and in this season, we're examining what it takes for independent public interest media to operate in a turbulent world. Across many countries, free media are under strain. Journalists face censorship, repression, and direct threats. Funding is shrinking. Digital platforms dominate attention, and public trust is slipping. This season, we look at how media can stay resilient and stay relevant as a cornerstone of democracy. Our goal is clear: to help listeners understand the forces reshaping journalism and to spark real conversations about how to protect and support a free press. Today's episode is about digital censorship. It's rising fast. Public interest media are being blocked, monitored, and attacked. Journalists fear for their digital security and their physical safety. They also face constant disinformation and state propaganda. Exiled outlets carry the heaviest load. Many have been pushed out of Russia, Belarus, Myanmar, Afghanistan, Nicaragua, and Eritrea, just to name a few. They still report for their audiences, but survival is hard. Our guests today are Oliver Linow and Esther Kleine. Both are internet freedom specialists from Deutsche Welle's IT and security department. They work on keeping independent media online and safe. To the both of you, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank
Well,
you.
perhaps we can start off by you telling us exactly what that entails. What does it mean to be an internet freedom specialist at Deutsche Welle?
Yeah, I can make the start. So our job is to create and to develop solutions to fight censorship and strategies against censorship for Deutsche Welle, for our content creators in 32 languages. So Deutsche Welle is blocked in China, in Iran, in Russia, in Belarus, and in
Burkina Faso.
Burkina Faso, yes. In these countries, we are blocked, and so we help the editorial teams to bring the content into these countries.
Right. And for my personal job description, I would add as a project manager, not a specialist. So I would always go to Oliver and ask, how is the technical solution in detail? What do I have to explain to the newsroom, and what do they have to explain to the audience, so that the audience is in the end able to take these barriers and come to us again via VPN or any other circumvention technique, right? And so I'm trying to build the bridge between the tech and in the end the audience, right?
I think that's a very good way of putting it. So, on the one hand, you both work on digital censorship strategies, and at the same time, it's also your job to communicate these strategies to whoever may find them useful. And unfortunately, with digital censorship being on the rise, lots of outlets will find that useful in these times. So maybe you can walk us through scenarios of how exactly governments limit the free flow of information. How does digital censorship actually look like in practice?
This can happen by blocking several websites like dw.com or other international media. They can block platforms. But sometimes they only throttling website so that people can access to these websites slower, and they don't really realize that someone is blocking it. So, but with the low performance, they are no longer happy to visit these websites, and so also governments can create internet shutdowns so that a country is completely blocked from the internet. This is usually happening for a temporary time, so not for longer than a few weeks, because there's always a big collateral damage also for these countries. So after a few days, also what we have seen in Iran in the last month, in January, that they have shut down the complete internet for a few days, and then they have realized there is so big economic damage that they have slightly opened the internet again. So these are some tactics of blocking websites and to censor the internet. But there are also some more, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one example of the throttling event is YouTube in Russia, right? So when the Kremlin, I would say, decided not to let the Russians be able to enter YouTube anymore, they slowly began throttling it, and it was harder and harder to use it. And they could just give a statement and say, well, it's their fault, it's YouTube's fault, it's Google's fault, it's not our thing, it's not censorship. But in the end, of course, they decided to technically intervene. And yeah, the audience had to find ways to circumvent the throttling, which was in the end VPN again. But YouTube still is a popular platform in Russia, so they didn't succeed, I would say.
So I think that's a very interesting point you're making, that there are the strategies that governments are employing, like blocking websites, but there are also levels to the strategies they're employing. So there's a spectrum between blocking and throttling, and that example from Russia was also very interesting, because obviously I'm in the United States, and here there is this current discussion as well around whether TikTok might be suppressing content that is unfavorable to the administration. There have been some users complaining of blocked posts. Now, TikTok, of course, blamed it on a power outage, much in the same way that you described in your Russian example there. Of course, I think part of it is also, there are parts of this where we're sure it's the government, and sometimes you can't be. You just know that it's happening, right? So, you guys also started to talk about circumvention strategies. You talked about VPNs, but I'd like to go a little bit more in detail about that. So, let's talk about ways around digital censorship, the circumvention tools and strategies that media outlets could use. How can independent media outlets respond to these government strategies of blocking, of throttling, and internet shutdowns, as we've seen in Iran?
Yeah, if websites are technically blocked, it is possible to use a VPN, a special VPN that is very robust against detection, so that the sensors can detect that people using a VPN, so that there is an obfuscation of the traffic, that it looks like VPN. For example, Psiphon, or also the Tor network, the Tor browser is a good tool to circumvent blocking. When it comes to internet shutdowns, it's much harder. So and many times there are still some small holes in the firewall that tools can use, also that Psiphon can use. That have we seen in Iran in January also. Then there are also satellite internet connections via Starlink, for example, and hopefully more competitors in the future also. And this is much harder to block. And yeah, there are always ways around, I would say. And where it is very hard. So with your example from TikTok, so if a platform is banning content, so it can be restored from independent media because it's banned. So if websites are technically blocked, we can circumvent it, or they can circumvent it, but banning from platforms, it's impossible.
So that they decide this content is allowed and this is being promoted and the other one is being banned, or yeah, not even allowed. Of course, there's no technical circumvention. But I also want to add the mirrors. I mean, I think that is the lowest barrier solution for people who aren't that techy, who just need a proper link, right? Just a working hyperlink that's leading towards, in our case, dw.com. That is a solution if there's a hybrid market, for example. I mean, we were blocked in Turkey for 3 years, and that was just us. It wasn't the social platforms. And there, the mirroring, so the proxy links were really important because it's even harder to explain to an audience that they should use circumvention tools when all the other platforms or a lot of other platforms are still available. Then it would be our intention to convince them to use a VPN just for us. And that's even tougher sometimes.
Yes, I can imagine. So basically, it's, the idea is that it's hard enough to get your content out there, to get eyes in front of your content, and any kind of barrier and extra step that might be required, presents an additional challenge to informing your audiences, at least with our content, right? So, and I guess that's also related to my next question. Outlets, they obviously need a good relationship with their audiences in order to be viable, in order to thrive. So what does happen to audience relationships when there is that extra step, when you need a VPN, or you even fear for your safety just to access somebody's reporting that is blocked?
Well, you need trust. You need to build trust, and I would even say a network of trust, because one user of us who says this is a good brand, this is a trustworthy brand, needs to tell the next, like the acquaintances and the neighbors, hey, this is a go-to brand. And that's in the end hopefully a big network of people who trust DW as a brand and come back and use circumvention techniques and like many overcome the barriers to reach us, right? And that is our goal. And therefore, like the editors, the newsrooms need to work on that, work for that community, and need to communicate with that community, right? And like, for example, with a newsletter that is written in a very personal way, that kind of makes the audience feel at home, and also articles about the censorship situation that they're all in, like a more reflective perspective, and that also creates transparency about the situation and creates trust in the end. And also the classic community management on social media, right? I mean, it's not only technical censorship, it's also defamation and propaganda against our brand. And that is so there's also, of course, defamation in the commentaries, and that is something where you have to intervene as a newsroom and get in touch with the real people and show them that you're real as well, and that that you get in touch with them, right?
Yeah, trust is so important also when we recommend tools for the users. So we don't want to bring them in danger, and we want to bring our trust in our brand in danger. When we would trust, when we would recommend tools that people cannot trust because they lock user informations, and we don't know what happened with this user information. Are they selling this user data from people in authoritarian regimes that are doing something that is prohibited in the country? Because of this, we are using almost open source tools, so that people can trust. There's a full transparency into these tools from our side and also from the side of the users.
Actually, only open source, right?
Yeah.
We only use, yeah,
Now only open source. Yeah.
yeah,
Before it
yeah,
was sometimes different, but
mixed.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because open source means transparency as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, so from the perspective of somebody who works in independent media and that person has their content censored in a specific market, what should that person say to their audiences in order to kind of communicate that they are being kept safe when they use tools that are available?
At first, this is us. We're real. We're a real brand, and we're not being hijacked right now. Like, as you might have heard of those, some of those campaigns that actually uh, look alike famous brands, and also DW was used for that. And in the end, it was a bot, or the Kremlin maybe. um, so we're a real brand. You can trust us. That is why this is why we do good journalism. So explain yourself and explain the way you work, and uh, tell your sources, the typical journalistic aspects, and then this is the software you gotta use. We recommend it because this is open source. We trust it. It was peer-to-peer reviewed. It is accepted and well known in the internet freedom branch, and maybe also some other partners are already using it. Refer to others. Refer to BBC. Refer to RFEIL, and then it creates a connection, right?
Right. Sort of under the umbrella of independent media. Now, earlier we also mentioned exiled media, of course, so that is, as the name suggests, media outlets that are outside of the country that they are reporting from because the media in that country is no longer free. So, what questions the sort of what kind of additional challenges do media outlets in exile face when it comes to digital censorship? And what opportunities are there for them when it comes to circumvention?
I think in many times they have a small budget, have a low funding, and so I think they not have to put all the money into the content creation, also in the distribution, and of course they can find some advice in the so-called internet freedom community, where also many exile media are part of, and yeah, visiting events and there are many NGOs that are helping with tech, and I think they can also support exile media in the ways of distribution.
So there's an entire support ecosystem for exiled media when it comes to the topic of digital censorship circumvention to be aware of. I was also wondering, very often we talk about the rise of AI. Now, what does the rise of AI mean for the work of helping media bypass digital censorship? Like, does it help? Does it help media managers? Is it more of something that complicates the work? Or how do you view it?
It's so big, the topic of AI. So when I can give you the technical perspective when it comes to censorship and its circumvention. So AI can help to obscure the traffic. So that what I've mentioned, that it no longer looks like prohibited traffic, like VPN traffic, and there AI can be very useful. So that an VPN connection looks like video streaming, or like this podcast, for example. But of course, always both sides can use AI, and the sensors are also using AI for their firewalls. They're spending a lot of money into it, and AI can help to detect traffic that is not allowed in the country, and to fingerprint this traffic and then block it again. So this is especially in China the case, so where there is a lot of technical power and resources they can put in.
I think the cat and mouse game just proceeds, right? It's the same in the AI world, and the sensors getting better via AI, and those who circumvent it as well.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. Basically, the playing field is elevated on both sides of the battlefield, so to say. And yeah, but I do think it's a very interesting point. This idea of AI being able to mask VPN traffic and make it look like something else in countries where VPN traffic would be seen upon with suspicion. So
If I may add quickly, I think AI is also being used on the platforms that you mentioned earlier, like for censoring content, right? So it's detected automatically and banned automatically, and it's quite tough to get it back on the stage, right? So maybe that's a question in return, since I know that you're a correspondent in Washington, and you're dealing with some situation right now over there. The new regime doesn't seem to support um, all ways of free speech. How do you
I
what do
mean,
you think about this situation in the US?
I mean, this is something that is certainly a topic. Like, I find it interesting that you also mentioned this cat and mouse game. Because we also know that the administration is a very prolific user of AI. We've seen them release so many AI related images that are more towards the promotion of the administration. And at the same time, I also talked a little earlier about about this controversy around TikTok. And of course, TikTok has a new ownership structure in the US. And that ownership structure is, many would say that that ownership structure reflects a closeness to the administration. You have the president's personal friends within that ownership structure. As such, um, there was this discussion around whether TikTok was suppressing content that was deemed unfavorable to the administration, whether it's about, the sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, who's now deceased, or whether it's about the Minneapolis protests. Now, I don't want to overrepresent ourselves and say that at this moment we have a very defined strategy about how we're dealing with potential censorship on the platforms, but it is certainly something that we are observing, we are monitoring. So, with the case of TikTok in particular, we're told it's a power outage. Now, of course, we don't know for sure like how much stock to put in this explanation, but I do think it's necessary to observe that it's happening. And even if this explanation is on the table, enough confusion has already been created. And that in itself already has an effect, perhaps a self censoring or a chilling effect, right? But your job of media is try to work past chilling effects, try to take them into consideration, but um, be aware of them, but not be governed by them as such. Now,
I
while we're
think it
on,
shows. Sorry. I
no,
think it shows that those self-called free speech absolutists and the US, for some reason, don't see algorithms as a way of censorship. So they say if the algorithm works this or that way, this is still free speech, although it might be leading towards one opinion or one direction only, right? It's just interesting
sure.
and should be kept observed. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing to consider, right? Like talking about free speech and the big platforms, a lot of the arguments you will hear will be around how these platforms are all private companies. In a sense, they can do whatever they want, right? They can make business decisions, and whether that business decision is throttling an algorithm, then that's what they might see fit to do. Now, but this is a discussion that I also want to have with you guys on this topic of digital censorship specifically. So, what roles do these big platforms play? Because, for many media outlets, around the world, they are vital for distribution of content. You kind of can't get past posting your content on YouTube or Facebook or TikTok or X. But there are also, of course, instances where these big platforms cooperate with authoritarian governments. So, how do you see that dynamic in particular?
I see at the beginning of the big platforms, so it was such a big benefit for all media worldwide because they scale up uh, the audience on a higher level, and then they drill down the screw more and more, and there were yeah less opportunities for media to use these platforms to get a reach. And so we see this situation now. So it's very hard to distribute some content on social media platforms when it's too political or whatever. And yeah, especially when it comes to countries with strong censorship, and they still allow some big platforms, we can still use them to promote our circumvention tools or our proxy links, because this is always very important that the people know then how to use these tools and how to get these tools, and for this reason we can use these platforms, of course. Yeah.
And that's why, I mean, the Fediverse comes into our minds more and more, right? Because this is not being owned by one or some people. It's also not being ruled by an unknown algorithm. It's more a democratic approach. Everyone gets the same chance, every content gets the same chance, but it's also then harder to actually reach many people. So it's
Because
it's
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 boring for many people. Yeah.
yeah, so it's either or. Either you stick to the rules that the big platforms give you, so make some showering kangaroo content and get some reach, or you want to show the content that is important to you, which might be societal critique, and then it gets kind of banned or not really pushed into the feeds.
Right. So, meaning, trying to use these big platforms or trying to get your content on big platforms. I guess the idea is that you have to understand that there's a price of admission, right? There are costs to using
Yeah.
them, and
Yeah, so when we use Google to try to promote our circumvention techniques, we actually had debates whether we use the word censorship,
Circumvention,
circumvention. Yeah,
bypass is
so
better.
the words that we actually needed to be promoted were the ones that we debated whether we could use them or rephrase them so that Google still pushes it, right?
right.
That's the reality.
Yeah, that is so interesting. And once again, just a very complex job you have. Like it's very clear. Now, so we spoke a little bit about kind of authoritarian governments. Basically, the idea of censorship is that media is made illegal, right? Like in many countries. So, what are the key steps media need to take to ensure both the physical safety and the digital security of their staff? In especially working for media outlets where the media environment is particularly repressive.
Well, I think the stuff they need training, so it's possible. So for people, journalists or technical staff that are working in these countries, that they have a protection, that they can protect themselves physically and in a digital way. And there are a lot of guidelines they can use and to make the work safer for them there. But in some countries, let's say in Russia, for example, yeah, it's nearly impossible. So especially when we speak about Deutsche Welle. So for the status of Deutsche Welle in this country, so the people are absolutely not safe, and they bring themselves and their families in danger.
But maybe I could extend the question to you, Oliver. Could you go back to the time when you entered the internet freedom aspect? I mean, you were like a first mover back then, right? What did you do first? Like, did you go to a conference? How did it all start? I would also be interested to learn about that.
Yeah, the USA they were very advanced in this field, and so they have started with the OTF, with the Open Technology Fund, and this Open Technology Fund has supported and has yeah, introduced many tech NGOs that are still doing a good job because they are all open source organizations. They don't make the complete work voluntary, so they need some funding for maintenance, for providing services and so on, and so they need some funding, and that was given from the OTF. And so at the beginning it was there were some small corporations with some VPN providers.
And that everyone should do that, right? Like all the censored, everyone who's affected by censorship should like build up a network with those VPN providers, right? I think that is our recommendation. Because without this big internet freedom network, which is acting worldwide and and helping each other out worldwide, you don't have the knowledge to intervene or circumvent the censorship that's affecting you.
Do you have a sense that independent media around the world are aware of the risks generally and are able to take those steps that you suggest, these networking steps, these communication steps to keep themselves safe, both in a physical and digital sense?
Not
I cannot
everyone, right?
Yeah, not everyone. So some of them we knew very good, and they are good protected and they are good connected. But there are so many small exile media, independent media, let's say in Latin America, also in Asia, and there I'm not sure about this. Yeah.
And we now also keep reminding editors who stand in front of the camera, for example, or give their names publicly for those kind of things, like campaigns for circumventing censorship or also for public articles. They should be aware that that their name is public and their face is public, and that might be a threat that might put them into danger, and that's they should be very aware of that. So
And
whoever
always the families also.
and the
that are back in the country.
Because most people who work for a media outlet for a certain market also have a personal relation to that market, and they should make clear or make sure that their family and themselves is not affected, right?
Yeah, I guess they're looking for points of vulnerability in your life, right? That they could possibly use against you. And the more information you release out there to help them do that, perhaps the more likely it then becomes. And that's something, as you say, that should be kept in mind. Now, you mentioned, exiled newsrooms and the sort of level of awareness that they have. So just bringing it back to them, because I can also imagine that it's a challenge for exiled newsrooms to gather information safely, but also still stay in touch with the local realities on the ground because they're not there, right? So, like, what strategies would help them kind of gather information safely, make sure that they're gathering information in a safe manner, as well as being aware of what's happening in their local markets?
Yeah, I think first of all, they have the good situation that they still have a connectivity, a relation to these countries because they worked before from these countries, and they have still some people inside. And I think they need strategies for communication and to keep the people inside the country safe. There are trainings available for this so that they can communicate securely. They can exchange files also, videos, audios, and so on. There are also the way to use whistleblower platforms. They are secure. But it's tough, and I think the longer this situation is, where they cannot work from the field, from inside the country, the harder or the bigger the problem is at the end.
I think that about covers all my questions, and this has been a fascinating topic indeed. But I do want to ask one last question of the both of you, and it does have this. It does have something to do with this cat and mouse game that you mentioned earlier. So, in this cat and mouse game between authoritarian governments repressing media versus media outlets that employ digital censorship circumvention strategies, who is winning that game in your view and why?
There's always a way to enter a market. And that makes me think that the circumventors win in the end.
I think we need joint forces. So each media outlet alone is too small. So we have to work together. When we see the budget China spends into their Great Firewall, it's multiple times higher than the complete DW budget. So it's impossible to circumvent blockings only with resources of Deutsche Welle or from one media outlet. So we have all to work together, and then we always find a way around the blocking. And I think we have also to publish what they do, how much money they spend into the blocking, into the Great Firewall, because also people in these countries, they don't understand, or they don't understand why a country has put so much money into suppressing free speech, free media.
And that is also adaptable for a corporate strategy, right? So every media outlet that is affected by censorship needs to prioritize these issues. I mean, from bottom, like the worker for research and in the newsroom, up until the highest director. Everyone needs to talk about it and needs to adapt to the situation. That is a whole chain of dependencies that need to be considered there, and that is also a budget topic, but yeah, a priority aspect as well.
You really can't get around the resources question, of course, but I think it is a very good point you made about how making sure everyone on every level is aware, and how it is important to recognize that in a way there's safety in numbers. As you say, cooperation will be key at the end of the day. So that brings us to the end of today's episode, and we explored how digital censorship is changing, what it means for independent media, and why protecting access to information matters more than ever. So a big thank you to our guests, Oliver Linow and Esther Kleine, for sharing their insight and experience. We learned so much today. Thank you all for listening. You'll find links, resources, and further reading in the show notes. We hope they help you dig deeper into the issues we discussed today. We'll be back soon with more on how public interest media can survive and thrive in a rapidly shifting world. Until then, take care, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for listening to Survive and Thrive, the Media Viability Podcast. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe and make sure to hit like so that other listeners can find us as well. For feedback, send an email to dw-academy.surviveandthrive@dw.com. You can find all the information in the show notes.